Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Kacey Gantzer, and I am a planning coordinator for the West Virginia Department of Agriculture. Today, we're going to talk about navigating the sales of home-based products in West Virginia through our many registered farmers markets. Here in West Virginia, we offer many opportunities to advance your business. We allow the sale of home-based food products, farm-raised produce, meat, and eggs. And at the Department of Agriculture, we offer many different levels of assistance, including marketing and reviewing your labels. You'll see here in the picture, this is an excerpt from our West Virginia Grown Directory. As a West Virginia Grown member, you can show your customers that you are a product made right here in West Virginia. Within the directory, we give your contact information and tell the story of your farm, and you also get 2 color pictures. This is a free marketing program we offer through the Department of Agriculture, along with label reviews and other technical assistance. So we encourage anyone producing products in the state to look into join our West Virginia Grown program. So, what can we sell here in West Virginia? Well, we base everything off of our rules and regulations and put it out in our vendor guide. Our vendor guide is a comprehensive guide to how to sell food products here in West Virginia. One of the most exciting things we have in West Virginia is the allowability of non-potentially hazardous foods to be made in your home. If you look on page 2 of our vendor guide, all the items in green are considered non-potentially hazardous. That means they don't need time and temperature control, and they can be left shelf stable without any refrigeration. These items include apple butters, cakes and candies, breads, fruit pies, honey, tree syrups, and whole canned chopped tomatoes. The list goes on, so make sure to check out our West Virginia Farmers Market vendor guide. Now, down at the bottom, you can see in red, these are some potentially hazardous foods that can also be sold at farmers markets with certain regulations, permits, and certifications. And we'll get into that as we go further along. But when you're looking for some basic information about selling your products, page 2 of our vendor guide, remember green is non-potentially hazardous and red is potentially hazardous. So let's talk more about that. What is non-potentially hazardous foods? Often these are called cottage foods, foods that can legally be made in your home. They do not require refrigeration. They do not need water testing or anything like that. These foods can be prepared in an uninspected home kitchen or a community kitchen like a church kitchen. They must be labeled in accordance with the West Virginia food laws. The most important thing we need to do is to follow those legal labels and make sure we are informing our customers what they are purchasing. So those non-potentially hazardous foods, you'll notice here we have canned tomatoes. Up until about 5 years ago, this was something that you were not able to sell. But because of its high acidity, whole chopped or diced tomatoes can be sold canned. Now you can't add peppers or herbs or onions to make a sauce. That's going to put you in another category. This needs to be just tomatoes. But this also allows us to sell things like dried herbs and teas, cakes and candies, breads and tree syrups. Honey falls under this category, but everyone is required to register their apiary with the Department of Agriculture. Honey has its own labeling requirements. Those are also in your vendor guide. Another example would be freeze-dried, which is becoming very popular. If something like a whole blueberry starts off as non-potentially hazardous, that means we're not cutting it, it can be sold freeze-dried. Now, an example of something that couldn't be sold freeze-dried without additional permitting would be apple chips, because we are cutting those apples. There is absolutely a way to do that, and we'll talk about that in one of the next slides. But these are the basic examples of your non-potentially hazardous foods. If you have a question about your product, feel free to contact us at the Department of Ag. Another written list, because sometimes people like to see it this way. This again shows those non-potentially hazardous foods and that you are not required to have a farmer's market vendor permit, and you are not required to have any permitting from your department or your state health department. So again, no permitting for these items. So what kind of business opportunity is non-potentially hazardous food? It is a amazing entry level way to enter the food market. Oftentimes we go to the farmer's market early in the season and there is not a lot of produce available. This is a great way to extend that season. Maybe adding some value to your food. Maybe you grow a ton of zucchini and you might look at doing some zucchini breads because this is non potentially hazardous and a way to add variety to your farmer's market table. It's a great option for those bumper crops. If you have a great year with tomatoes, you can be canning those tomatoes and selling them the next season. Now, a lot of people say to me, tomatoes aren't that marketable. Who's buying just canned tomatoes? Well, we live in a world of meal prep kits, and people are very used to getting now instructions on how to further process what they're purchasing. So you could have the option of selling your jar of tomato sauce and then maybe upselling that person with a recipe and sell maybe an onion and pepper or some dried herbs along with it so they can have the experience of making their sauce and still getting those great local tomatoes. Great way to turn family recipes into money and to test the market without investing in a large commercial kitchen or a lot of permitting. As long as it falls in that non potentially hazardous category, you can start this business without a huge investment. And as always, we can offer assistance and advice to make sure you're doing everything that is legal and to really start to market your business. You want to tell the story of your home based food. Be proud that you've started small and where you're selling, which most likely is through farmers markets or direct to your consumer. The most important part of selling these non potentially hazardous foods is to make sure you are labeling it appropriately. Yes, there are no registrations, permits, or fees, but you are required to inform your customers correctly. Here in West Virginia, you're being required to include everything that would be on an FDA sold anywhere label. And in addition, we have a disclaimer sentence, which you're going to say, boy, that's an awfully long sentence for a label, but there are lots of options for this. It could be on the top, the back, the bottom, small area at the bottom of your label. It could be a separate sticker. But if you are making food products in a home kitchen, we cannot guarantee things like cross-contaminant allergens. Even if your kitchen looks clean, we can't guarantee that maybe someone made a peanut butter and jelly sandwich there prior to you using the kitchen. So we have to make sure your customer knows exactly what they are buying. The statement we include verbatim is this product was made in a non-commercial kitchen that may not be subject to inspection and may contain cross-contact allergens not included in the allergen statement. That must be told to your customer. We need that in writing verbatim. You'll notice in there it says that might not be included in the allergen statement. That allergen statement is another requirement. So you'll see, of course, we have to include our ingredients in descending order, and we might list like wheat, eggs, and soy in our ingredients. Even though it's right there in writing, and we have that disclaimer sentence, we need to, on the next line, call out those allergens by saying something like this example, containing wheat, soy, and eggs. You'll want to include your address. You do not have to include your house number. If you are making this in a home kitchen, you may simply just include the city and state. You absolutely can include it. And if you ever scaled up to where you're selling out of your home, no longer in your home kitchen to a commercial kitchen, it will need the full address. You also need your net weight. That must be included. That also is required for the honey label. You need to include the statement of identity, and this needs to be the simple basic name, like a chocolate chip cookie. What couldn't be in place of chocolate chip cookie would be grandma's favorite treat, because the consumer doesn't know exactly what that is. You could include both and you could name that product, but you also need to explain to them that it is chocolate chip cookies. Once you have that proper labeling, then it's time to think of things like a logo, a color theme, branding your business. You need to plan for profitability and pricing. A lot of people do not equate their time into the cost of production. Once you start, you need to be looking at, am I going to purchase my products in bulk? How am I going to price these individual cookies? Is it better for me to sell by the half dozen or the dozen because of packaging? There are lots of decisions to be made, even with a small home-based food business. You want to keep your records. This is a business just like anything else. And by keeping really good records, that's going to tell you if there's a time where you're needing to scale up. Developing a marketing plan is very important no matter how small your business is. You want your customers to get a consistent product and to start to understand and recognize your brand. Even if you're at a farmer's market with just 6 other vendors, this is the stepping stone to allow your business to be identified by your logo, by your types of products. Maybe you use something from your own farm in every product. We want to tell that story. What can we do with those non-potentially hazardous foods? Well, we can take orders direct from customers. This is huge. Prior to about 5 years ago, selling birthday cakes from your home was not legal because you had to do it in a commercial kitchen. So now custom birthday cakes and custom cookie orders are an option. You can take those orders online. You can do delivery or sell from your home. You could partner with a local retailer or consignment farmers market. We have many year-round farmers markets throughout the state who do items on consignment. You could sell at your seasonal farmers markets. We have over 300 registered farmers markets here in West Virginia. And you can also sell at seasonal events and fundraisers, as long as these items are non-potentially hazardous. All right, this is the one everyone always wants to talk about because everybody wants to sell what's potentially hazardous because a lot of times it is seen as more marketable. What is potentially hazardous? Well, that's a food that requires refrigeration or freezing. It's a food that contains moisture, that means water activity, or maybe it has a pH between 4.6 and 7.5, which makes it potentially hazardous. The difference with these items is they can only be sold at a registered farmer's market when produced in an uninspected or home kitchen. But luckily, we have lots of options. Farmers markets here in West Virginia are defined as both farm stands, roadside trucks, traditional farmers markets, mobile farmers markets, and online. So as long as you get that market registered, there is a great option for selling some of these potentially hazardous foods. So what falls in that category? Salsa, hot sauce, cut produce, and meal prep kits. Cut produce is a great opportunity. Unlike salsa and hot sauce, you don't have to take better process control school, and you don't need process authority, which means approval of how you're making your product and the recipe. With cut produce, you would just need a vendor permit, which is $35, and that covers you in all the counties in West Virginia. And you need a home kitchen inspection, which costs $27. They will come to your house and just make sure you're clean and using sanitizable cutting boards, making sure you have a testable water source and things like that. Cut produce, cutting zucchini or melons or butternut squash can make a much more valuable product, and this can be legal to do in your home with the proper permitting. Non-traditional jams like your sugar-free or your hot pepper jams fall under this category. And of course, all of those great pickled products and acidified foods. Things like cheesecake and cream cheese and custards. These are baked goods that require refrigeration. They also fall in this category. And then back to our freeze-dried produce, your apple chips or anything else like that you're cutting the produce and then selling it freeze-dried. Again, this is all in the Farmer's Market Vendor Guide. Here's some more examples of what you will need. You're going to notice for those acidified foods, all these things we need the Farmer's Market Vendor Permit, which is $35. Things that are shelf stable, like your salsa and your spaghetti sauce, those require a label review. So we've talked about what needs to be on that label. You'll send it into the Department of Agriculture and you'll get a certificate of label review. This is the way to say, hey, I have done everything I need to do. My label is correct and informing my customer of everything they need to know. If you want to join West Virginia Grown, we're also going to require that label review for non-potentially hazardous foods. If there's something wrong with your label, we just simply send it back and say, here's what you need to change. Please send it back once you have completed your label. You will also need process authority. There are about 15 active process authorities that we've found, and those are listed in your vendor guide. These companies or universities will test your product not only for the recipe, but the process in which you are creating your product. So they're going to make sure your salsa is pressure canned and held at a certain temperature for a certain amount of time. They're going to go through that entire process and approve it. This also falls under fermented products, jellies, and jams that are not traditional, which just means fruit and sugar is the only thing that can be in a traditional jam. So, unlike the cut produce or the cheesecake, if we want to make shelf stable canned goods that are potentially hazardous, here are the things we have to do. And don't panic, it looks like a lot, but once you're through this process, you can then legally be selling these potentially hazardous foods made in your home kitchen. So, it's going to require that farmer's market vendor permit, which is $35. This is a change because it covers every county. So you will only need one of these. And if you're selling multiple potentially hazardous products, there's only one permit required. So let's say maybe you sell USDA processed frozen meat and you also want to do a salsa, you're only paying for one permit. If you're making something in your home, you're going to need that home kitchen inspection, which is $27. And you do not pay for the travel time. So let's say you're in Southern West Virginia, you're only paying for the time that they're there and inspecting your kitchen. You're going to complete an approved training course like Better Process Control School. You're going to get that letter of process authority for those acidified, pickled, or canned foods. You're going to get that label review to make sure you are including the right information. You, of course, are going to keep records where your produce came from, when you purchased it. And if you have private or well water, you're going to need to show an annual water test. After you've completed all that, you can then sell potentially hazardous foods at registered farmers markets. So let's look at that label again, because this is so very important. If you look down there at the bottom, we've managed to fit that sentence in there and it doesn't look crowded, and we're telling our customer exactly what they need to know. This product was made in a non-commercial kitchen that may not be subject to inspection and may contain cross-contact allergens not included in the allergen statement. We have the ingredients, and we'll notice this is a very interesting salsa. It includes pecans. So right below, we're calling out that allergen of tree nuts, pecans. We have our net weight. We have the little pepper company and the address. We're saying it's salsa. And then we have this great logo, vibrant picture of a tomato. This is the kind of label that is going to pop on a shelf. The only thing that it would make it better is if they are a member of West Virginia Grown, and that would be included in the logo, or maybe they're a member of our Homegrown by Heroes. It is great to add these marketing tools to your labels. This, again, is a requirement. If you don't like the example in picture form, if you look in the vendor guide, we also have it written out step by step, so you know exactly what to include. So here's a sample of our label review. You can see it's not too long. You'll send in your pictures of your product with your label, where you're selling it and what you're doing. So let's say you want to join West Virginia Grown and you are an egg producer and you have already registered as a small egg producer, which is a free registration, but you want to join West Virginia Grown because you want to put the West Virginia Grown logo on your egg labels. You will simply send in a picture of your current label, and that label is also in the vendor guide. It shows you exactly what needs to be included on eggs. So produce people could also join. You don't have a required label, so you would just maybe use it on your signage, or maybe you have clamshells for your strawberries. There are lots of options for West Virginia Grown. Cut flower producers, you're eligible. We're making a product here in West Virginia We would love to have you in the program. Again, produce sales, what's great about them, if you're not cutting that produce, there's no vendor permit and no requirements. You are, though, are required to meet current FDA Food Safety Modernization Act rules. That means you must display a sign at your table that is visible to patrons, indicating the name and contact information for your farm or the farms that grew the produce. This allows us to track things for food safety. If there is an issue, we know where to go. There are many outlets for produce sales in West Virginia, your farmers markets, your on-farm stands. We have our Fresh Food Act here in West Virginia, which is a law that requires all state institutions who are buying food, that's schools, prisons, hospitals, to buy 5% West Virginia grown. We have many consignment markets and locally owned stores who are always looking for local produce. And we have some pretty amazing programs to sell through our food banks. Quickly, I'm going to go over meat and eggs. We have poultry exemptions here in West Virginia, which means you can process on farm. Those rules and regulations are located in the vendor guide. Eggs do not require any additional permitting. You just need to register as a small egg producer. What we cannot sell at farmers markets is custom exempt or exempt meat that has been processed not for resale. You're selling meat at a farmer's market, it must be USDA or WVDA inspected for resale. If you're selling meat at a farmer's market, you're going to need that vendor permit, $35, because we need to make sure it's being kept at temperature when you are at the market. We also have a rabbit exemption for on-farm processing, and those rules are on page 22 to 24. Again, here's your eggs. Eggs are a great option for farmers markets. Here is your label requirement. And as long as you're selling under 150 dozen or less per week, you don't have any permitting or cost of registration to sell your eggs. We would love to see that West Virginia grown logo on those egg cartons. Why join West Virginia grown? Well, it gets you in the market bulletin each month, and we print over 50,000 copies. It gets you in our directory. You're located on our website, which is searchable by county or city. This also allows you to use the logo as a marketing tool on your website, on your sign at the farmer's market, on your clamshells, and hopefully all the way up to your shelf-stable product that you are selling out of a inspected kitchen that can cross state lines and be sold anywhere. We would love to see that level of product branded with West Virginia grown. This is a free membership, and you also get promotional materials at cost. So there are a lot of great opportunities for joining our free marketing program, West Virginia Grown, which was established in 1986. I know that was a lot of information, and I'm so glad you sat through it. We hope that you'll join us for our live questions section later on in the week. And if not, here's some great references. And as always, feel free to contact the West Virginia Department of Agriculture Business Division or the West Virginia Farmers Market Association, and we can get you on the right track. Thank you so much for joining us today.